It is Easter 2025, and listen, let me just tell you right up front, my name is Mark, by the way. If you are new here, a special welcome to you. Really good to have you here. I'm one of the pastors around here. Now, I know that today is all colory and nice and pastel-y and fun and joyous, but how many of us are willing to admit that life ain't like that, right? Life ain't like that, man. This week alone, I'm a pastor, so I got a busy weekend. Right, and so I had a lot to do, and I'm like, I got to figure out what am I going to talk about at Easter? What am we going to say at Good Friday? I got to work on all this stuff. Lord, please give me an opportunity, get some time. And of course, my wife invites 30 people over for dinner on Thursday night, and I'm like, gosh, and then after it was over, I had to watch her clean it all up. It was crazy. And then Friday came. It was Good Friday. We had a lot to do, and it was garbage day at my place, and so I got the big bins, and I walked them like I live in the country a bit, so I walked these bins out 5 minutes to the road, and I put them down, and I looked around, and all my neighbors' bin flaps were all open, and I realized, oh my gosh, I missed garbage day, guys, Easter weekend. I dragged the bins back. My wife's like, are you, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, they've never taken them this early. She's like, it's 11 o'clock. And then we got Good Friday, and then we got all these things. It's like life. And so I had to take those garbages, and I said, I got to help around here. So I got my truck, and I pulled all the big garbage bags out of the bins, and I threw them in my truck, and I drove to this dumpster, and I literally opened, and I guess there was some pole in my truck, and it went through all the garbages, so I pulled the bags out, and it was dripping all over me, all the garbage juice. Gosh. But he is risen. Life is crazy, man. Life kicks back. Life is not easy. And here's the beautiful thing about Easter. You don't have to have a perfect life. Your life can be a mess. You can be spilling garbage all over the place. You could not have time for anything because life isn't easy. It will never be perfect. You will never be perfect, but you don't have to clean your life up and be perfect before you approach God. That's the beautiful thing about Easter. He came and died for you. I'm going to tell you right up front what Easter is about, all right? It's not about the fact that spring is here. It's not about the fact that winter is over. It's not about the fact that white people are getting a little darker, all right? It's not about any of the... And some of you need it. I'm not going to lie to you. But here's the thing. It's not about any of those things, right? It's about the fact that here's what legitimately happened. God knew you were a sinner, knew you were a mess, so he sent his son Jesus to die in your place, to take the wrath of God on himself so that you would never feel it. And then 3 days later, he rose from that death to give you life. That's what this day is about. There is a science writer. He was a skeptic. He was an atheist. And his name was G.B. Hardy. And here's what he said when he started exploring religion. He said, when I looked at religion, I had two questions. One, has anyone ever conquered death? And two, if they have, did they make a way for me to conquer death? I checked the tomb of Buddha, and it was occupied. I checked the tomb of Confucius, and it was occupied. I checked the tomb of Muhammad, and it was occupied. And I came to the tomb of Jesus, and it was empty. Did he make a way for me to do it? And I opened the Bible and discovered that Jesus said, because I live, you shall also live. See, this is the beautiful thing about Easter. It's not just about, this is very important, it's not just about what happened to Jesus 2,000 years ago. It's about what all that means for you. It's about the fact that you came in here and you have sins in your life and you can never connect back to God. You have shame, you have guilt, you have things that are wrong with your life. And Easter says, I came and did all of this because I love you. For God so loved the world. I was watching a documentary with Mr. Rogers the other day. You know, he hang out with kiddos, he just loved kiddos. It was a documentary. And Mr. Rogers had this philosophy. He said he didn't need all the pomp and circumstance to connect with a kid. He said there's two things kids need to know, that they are loved and they have an infinite capacity to love others. That is literally what Easter is, man. It's that you are loved and you have a capacity to love others, to accept the forgiveness of God in your life and do something with it that is beautiful. Now, for some of you, you're here and you're a skeptic, you're a doubter. There's two things I want to talk about that Easter does. The first one is it eliminates and challenges our doubts, right? If you look at the story of Easter, this is from Luke 24. For those of you new to church, visiting, so glad you're here. Here's how the story unfolds. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and they went to the tomb because, of course, Jesus is dead and he's in there and they bring spices in that time. They found the tomb, though, rolled away. Oh, boy, that's not what I meant to do. Rolled away from the tomb. But when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord there. And they were wondering. Have you ever asked yourself, what are they wondering about? Some of you are here and you're skeptics. You don't really believe this yet. And let me just say, you find yourself in this story because this group of people arrived to the tomb of Jesus and their first deduction was not, they didn't just walk there and go, oh my gosh, the tomb is empty. He is risen, Johanna. Yes, he is. He is risen indeed, Mary. Let's create Easter. They walked up and went, I don't know what is going on here. I'm wondering about this. Why is the tomb empty? They, like some of you, were skeptics. And we're glad you're here. And maybe you're a scientific thinker and you're somebody who goes, I don't really believe people rise from the dead and so on and so forth. And of course, that was me growing up. Those of you who go to the church, normally you know my story. But those of you who are new, that was me growing up. I grew up in a non-Christian home. I didn't walk into a church till I was 19. My father was such a skeptic. He didn't like anything about Christianity. So we had no prayer, no God, no Bible, no church, not even on Easter. We never went to church. And my mom had proposed to my dad that they call my brother, who is a few years older than me, that his name would be Matthew. And my dad was like, absolutely not. I heard that name was in the Bible. I don't want to name him that. So my mom's like, okay, well, let's spell his name with one T. And my dad's like, okay, good. So my brother's name is Matthew with one T, so that it's not biblical. That's my dad's thinking. And then a few years later, they had me and they named me Mark. So clearly this guy had never picked up a Bible before in his life. Right? My middle name is Andrew. My brother's middle name is James. So we got 4 disciples knocked off. And my dad's walking around like, yeah, I'm not biblical. It's like, all right. So that was the home I grew up in. I was a skeptic growing up. I wanted, if I was going to believe in Christianity, it was going to be because I investigated it and I came to a rational, evidential conclusion like some of you. And some of you are exactly like that. You think church people believe in Easter because they're not as smart as you, that science is the real way to go. But the reality is you have a worldview. You have a religious worldview. Even if you believe, let me ask you a question. If you're a skeptic and you're here and you don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus, what do you think happens after you die? Well, you might say nothing, but that is a faith position because you don't know. You've never been there. You have no evidence that nothing happens. In fact, one of my friends who works in a hospital, he talks about the fact that in the hospital, no religious philosophy is allowed to inform any decision that is made. You can't bring religion into tending for people. But he said, here's the irony. People will sit in the back coffee after, and the nurses and the doctors will be talking, and they'll say something like this. Well, we had to unhook that person and they passed away, but at least they're not suffering anymore. How do you know that? How do you know that that person's not suffering more? You see, that is your faith position about the afterlife. You have no evidence to tell you what happens after you die, but you come here maybe as a skeptic and you believe certain things. So here's what historians would say. I read this book, 800-page book by a guy named N.T. Wright. He's a historian. And he studied the resurrection. And he said, actually, skeptics and historians believe that the resurrection did happen. And partly it's because of, right here, when they tell the story, this word, women. Right? Ladies, come on. Right? Here's what historians say. They go, you know why we believe the Easter story is probably legitimate? Because women, and here's what they say, because we all know women don't lie. This lady's like, yeah, I like this church. What's up? That's not true. That's not why. Listen, I got 3 daughters, all right? And I live in a world of lies. All the time, lies. Oh, Dad, I didn't know it was 11 p.m. No one had a watch. I didn't know. Oh, you said clean your room? Oh, I thought you said bring a broom. Here's a picture of my family. Look at this beautiful family. 3 awesome daughters. And when you look at those faces, you just got to go, liars. Just a bunch of liars. Deceitful to the core. No, it's not because women don't lie. It's historians think this is legitimate. I'll tell you why they think it's legitimate, because women were there. Because in that culture, women were not respected. Women weren't people who were educated. They weren't people that you could put in a court of law and ask them to say anything about any kind of evidential thing. So the fact that women are the first of the tomb brings legitimacy from a historical, skeptical vantage point. Because what is the other option? The option is, from a skeptical vantage point, that Easter is something that a bunch of disciples got together and they made up. They said, hey guys, let's all get together and we'll pretend that Jesus rose from the dead. We will pretend that when we got to the tomb, he wasn't there, and we'll just say, hey, he rose from the dead, and we all saw him, and we'll just go around the Roman Empire saying this. That's the only other option. But of course, the women being there would not be the way to do that. Just eliminate them, make sure religious men who are respected in the community are the ones that show up. But it's women. It's the fact that the early church exploded under persecution. Doesn't make any sense, because every disciple that said they saw Jesus rise from the dead was persecuted, killed, and tortured. And you don't die for a lie that you made up, right? You might die for a lie that you think is true, but you don't die for a lie that you got together with your friends and created. I saw this video the other day, and it was kind of a parody video of the disciples saying, let's create Easter. And they all got together, and they're like, okay, here, I got a really good idea. One of them's like, okay, everybody, here's the idea. We're going to pretend we saw Jesus rise from the dead. And everyone's like, yeah, wicked, great idea. So what's going to happen to us? What's in it for us? And he goes, nothing but death and torture. Woo! And then the guy's like, wait, question from the rear. Why are we doing this? What are you talking about? There's nothing in this for us? No, there's nothing in this for you. And yet, they went and they actually died and were tortured for this. Now, here's the other thing that's crazy. Historians point out. They say that the overnight transformation of the disciples makes no sense. That overnight, these super conservative Jewish boys whose parents and grandparents would have died so that they could worship on a Saturday, overnight flip to people who worship on a Sunday, and all of a sudden they worship a man, right? No culture had said, oh, the Jewish culture, you never worship a man. But all of a sudden overnight, hey, Jesus showed up. But all of this overnight, that something had to happen. Because here's the thing, I know religious people, and you all religious, you don't change very easy, right? You get stuck in your ways. Believe me, I'm your pastor. I'm up here every week. I look out at you, and you sit in the same seat every week. And I know that today bothers you. You're like, Easter, all these new people. I want my seat. Bunch of religious people stuck in your ways. That's what happens to religious people. And that's what happened to these guys. Overnight, though, they changed they worship on a Sunday now. They say Jesus rose from the dead. We pray to him. We sing to him. We worship him. We think he's God. Something must have happened, historians say. It's the reality. And then there's the evidence, guys, of just the miraculous experiences of every person in this room. In some way, listen, raise your hand if something has happened in your life that if God didn't exist, you have no way of explaining. Raise your hand if you have something like that, right? Look at that. Something, it doesn't make any, if God does it, just doesn't make any sense. The day that God told me to go up to this random woman's house that went to our church and knock on her door and say, hi. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's weird. And God said, do it. And I'm like, okay. Hi. Show up and said, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't know. And I went inside and we sat for tea and we chatted a little bit. And at the end of that 2 hours, I went to leave and she looked at me, she said, do you know that I woke up this morning and I was so depressed and so lost in my life that I walked down from my bedroom and I told God that I'm gonna take my own life today unless someone comes to the front door, knocks on it, and encourages me. Now tell me God doesn't exist. Makes no sense. You think I just go knocking? I've never happened before, never happened since. I don't go randomly knocking on people's doors. The God of the universe made you, loves you, did this amazing thing through Jesus. And here's what you got to understand. Churches, people don't get together and celebrate this because we just want it to be true. We do it because it is true. If it didn't really happen, then let's just forget about it. I give my life to something that's some just little metaphor, an example for your life. God loves a comeback. A guy died, but he rose from the dead, but it's all a metaphor. No, this happened, actually happened. And I read a story a little bit ago about this small Baptist church, 200 people in this Baptist church. And they were, doing their church life, and the new worship leader came and he introduced drums into the church, right? And the church was mad. They're like, drums, that's bad to have any rhythm, in our worship, Singing to God should be just, body. And so drums, those are bad, those are evil. So they had this membership meeting, and the guy walks up to the microphone and he goes, don't you understand that Jesus Christ is rolling over in his grave right now, knowing we have drums in our church? And the next guy got up on the microphone. He said, let me tell you something. If Jesus is rolling over in his grave, we got bigger problems than drums in church, bro. We are still in our sins if Jesus is rolling over in his grave. You have no hope for your life. You have nothing to do with the problem that haunts you every single day of your life, the problem of your own death. You were terrified about it. And you don't know what's on the other side of the veil. And Jesus shows up and he goes, I'm giving you signs, man. You know what one of those signs is? The fact that you are here right now in this service, whatever brought you here. We're just glad you're here. What is God doing in your life to bring you here? Every left turn, right turn, meeting that person, keeping you alive, to have you here, to do something in your life, to transform you. That's the whole point. These are signs. I read a story this week of a guy and his buddies. They went to college out on the East Coast of the States. They were there at Harvard and in Boston, and they all lived in California. So one spring break, they got in the car. Of course, they're college kids. They don't have any money to buy flights. So they're like, let's go home and visit our family in California. So they all get in their car, and they're driving from east to west, and they're driving. And of course, their little plan was like, I'll drive 3-4 hours, and then I'll go sleep in the back, and then you drive 3-4 hours. There was 4 of them. So the one guy drives, and they're like halfway to California, and the guy sees a gas station. Everyone else is sleeping, so he passes it. So he does this big U-turn, and this literally happened to the guy, and he drives into the gas station, gets there, pumps gas, wakes everybody up. Hey, you got to take over now. I'm going to go to sleep. He goes back to sleep. Guy gets the thing, drives. Well, he never told him that he did a U-turn. So the guy is driving for 10 hours, and in reflection, and he drives back to Boston, right? But the problem is, he's like, man, I should have realized it because I kept seeing these signs. All these signs were like, Boston or bust. And he goes, well, that's kind of weird as I'm driving to California. And he keeps driving to Boston, and then he sees all these things, and then he says, finally, he said, it was when I saw the sun rising in my windshield. And he said, quote, that was too big a sign to ignore. And I read that story, I'm like, gosh, that is like Easter, man. God is saying the Son of God rose from the dead. That is too big a sign for you to ignore. He rose historically, and he's trying to get your attention and go, what are you doing with your life? You're living for money? You're living to be beautiful. You're living to have a perfect family. You're living for pleasure. I rose from the dead. I can transform everything about your life. This is what's beautiful about Christianity, by the way. It's not just about some esoteric ideas. It's about affecting the actual issues of your life, the real issues. Look at the story. In their what? In their fright, the women bowed down. Hey, anybody have fear here? Fright and fear run your life, just like they run my life. And Easter is the thing that solves your fear. Easter, see, this is where Christianity is super practical, because it starts to get down not only to your doubt, but to your fears. Some of you wake up and you're like, man, I'm terrified of the world. Again, I read a story this week of, it's actually a joke, but I thought it connected well to this. So there's four fathers. They're newly expectant fathers, and they're all sitting in the waiting room at the maternity ward to get their new babies. And so they're all sitting there, four of them, and the nurse comes into the first one, and she says, hey, you had twins. And the guy's like, I had twins? Oh my gosh, that's amazing, because I work for the Minnesota Twins. And the nurse is like, wow, that's incredible. And she leaves and she comes back into the second father and says, my gosh, you had triplets. And the guy's like, I had triplets? That's crazy, because I work for this company called 3M, right? This tech company, 3M, and I had 3 kids. This is overwhelming. It's crazy. And then she comes into the third father and said, oh my gosh, I can't explain this. You had quadruplets. You got 4 children. He goes, oh my gosh, I work for 4 Seasons. The irony of this, I work for the 4 Seasons Hotel. And the fourth father sitting there and just starts saying, ah! And they're like, what's wrong? He's like, I knew I shouldn't have taken that job at 7-Eleven. All right, it's kind of cheesy, but it makes the point. That guy is terrified. He is terrified with what life awaits him. He doesn't know what to do. And here's the thing. Some of you sit here and you're terrified. You're terrified that you might lose your spouse. You're terrified that your marriage might fall apart. You're terrified that you don't know where your kids are going to end up and whether they're going to be happy in life. You're terrified that the money might run out. You're terrified of the economy. You don't know what's going to happen. You're all scared. You're living in fright. You don't know what tomorrow holds. And all of us are there. Some of you are like, man, the thing that scares me the most is getting that cancer diagnosis. I would not know what to do if that happened. And Easter solves all of that. That's why the Apostle Paul has this great verse in the book of Philippians. He says this in Philippians chapter 3, verse 10. I want to know Christ, yes, to know the power of his resurrection. Meaning, I don't want just this to be about Jesus. I want this to be about me. I want to feel the power of the resurrection to transform my life. 4 hardest, most discouraging words in the English language are these. You will never change. And some of you walked in here having that story in your head. You had parents or people or teachers or your own sermon in your brain is you will never change. You will never change. You have that addiction and no one even knows about it. Even the people sitting beside you have no idea about it. And you're telling yourself as you walked in here today, you will never change. There is no hope. You know the one person in the world who never looked at somebody and said you will never change? Jesus. Because he knows you, he knows all your things, he knows all the things you do in the dark where no one's looking, and he looks at you anyway, and he loves you, and he says, not only did I rise from the dead, I want to give you the power to change your life. I want to take your shame, I want to take your guilt, I want to take your fear, and I want to make you a new person. Listen, so I grew up, the church knows this, with Tourette's and obsessive compulsive disorder. So when you have OCD, here's how your brain works. Because my parents got divorced when I was a kid, so the trauma. So I would do all kinds of habits, and I would hit a post, but then I'd have to hit it a certain amount of times so that something bad didn't happen. So I'd be walking in the airport or something to get on a plane, and I'd hit a post, and then I keep walking, and then 5 minutes later, I'd be like, oh, I need to go back and hit that post again. Right? My family would be like, where are you going? I'm like, I'll be right back. Post. Okay, now I'm good. Listen. You know what solved that in me? When I became a Christian, I began to believe and understand that God is in control and I am not. There's nothing this is wizardry, man. All my fear to control the outcome of every situation in life. Some of you mothers, you feel that, right? You feel the anxiety and the pressure, and you sit awake at 2 a.m. in the morning trying to figure out how you can make sure the kids just turn out exactly as you want them to, and you stay up late and you think about it. It's fascinating. In contrast, the only reason I know that my wife sits awake at 2 a.m. is because I just get up and go to the bathroom. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? She's like, I just want the kids to turn out great. I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. Which is the fascinating part of the story revolving around women too. The beautiful reality that the women get the people back all through the Bible. They get the people back who rose from the dead. The only thing that solved that in me was understanding God is in control, and I don't need to fear this anymore. I don't even need to fear death anymore. The most powerful thing in the world. Listen, tomorrow morning, I don't love flying, but tomorrow morning, I'm getting on a flight to fly to Toronto, okay? At 5:15 in the morning. God's not even up at 5:15 in the morning, okay? That's what time my flight is, 5:15 in the morning to go to Toronto. And I'm like, why am I taking this early flight? Oh, to see your mom. I'm like, oh gosh. All right, so I'm getting up early. I'm flying to Toronto 5:15 in the morning. Here's the thing, guys. There is no guarantee that you won't read on the Bayside website this week that I died in a plane crash going to Toronto. The gospel does not tell me that I'm not gonna die. It tells me that I'm safe in dying. It tells me that it could happen, but you don't need to worry about it if it does. Yesterday, we had a memorial service for one of the kiddos around here. His name was Elijah. Great kiddo, special needs kid. Loved him. Awesome kid. Nonverbal, wheelchair, loved on people, amazingly. He would greet at our 9:45 service. He would greet and he'd give you a pen and he'd kick you if he liked you. And he said the best time of his week was worshiping, was the music and worshiping God. I'm like, I thought the best time of the week was listening to me. All right, fine. And he's like, nah, the music, man, the music. And we had his memorial yesterday. It was fascinating. It was on his 11th birthday that we gathered over here in the cafe to remember him and celebrate his life. He went into surgery and had a cardiac arrest last week. And his parents were up there, and they were able not to be completely broken and falling apart. They were able to say, yes, it's true, he has passed and we're going to miss him. But here's the thing, because Easter is true, he is running now. He's talking. He's thinking. He has pure joy because there really is a place called heaven. There really is a new creation. It's real. Easter ain't some just little metaphor. It actually happened. And if it happened, you don't need to be afraid anymore. You don't need to fear anything. Jesus is trying to take your fear away. And he's trying to say, don't you understand what I have done so changes everything? Listen. The only way this works is where the story goes. They bow down their faces. Look at this. They bow down their faces. You ever bowed to God? No, you're too cool. You know what that says? It takes humility to get into the kingdom. I don't care how cool you are. I don't care how good looking you are. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how many people you've been with. Nothing gets you into the kingdom except humility. Coming to the end of yourself, which isn't hard for me. I was telling the church last week, God reminded me, I took my daughter to Target with her friend and they were running around buying some stuff, and I'm walking through Target and this lady walks up to me and she goes, oh, Pastor Mark, your sermons are the best. They changed my life. I'm like, yes. Yes. Tell me more. She's like, yes, changed my life. I'm like, yes, wonderful, wonderful. Let's keep chatting. And then my little Tourette's, my little tick noise that I have right now when I'm just kind of living my life, I go like this, I make that noise like that. So I'm just, so she comes up, you're the girl, oh, yes. And then literally 2 minutes later, I'm walking through Target and I look down the aisle and there's these two teenage boys. And they just reek like weed. Like they just smoked a joint and they're sitting there in the Target in the chip aisle, just like, getting their munchies figured out. So I walked by them and I guess I made my noise or whatever, and they looked up and they're like, and I'm like, freaking getting mocked by these two moron teenagers. All I wanted to do was punch them in the face for the cause of Christ. What a loser. And this is God reminding me, you ain't cool, bro. You ain't you're a loser, man. The only way into the kingdom is to realize you got nothing to bring to him. You bow down. You say, thank you, God, for the grace. Do you understand what that word means? Grace. The only way any of us get saved is by the grace of God. That's why the story goes on and the angel says, he's not here. He's what? risen. Remember, he told you while you were in Galilee, the Son of Man, that's Jesus, must be delivered. You ever thought about the phrase must be and wondered, what does that mean? Why must he be? Why must he be? Because you can never get into heaven on your own, ever. So he had to. That's what grace is. You're a disaster. And if you come to Bayside, you know I tell you that almost every week. You're a wreck, man. You are, listen, and it's easy when you're living in a household with 3 daughters to just constantly be reminded of this. It's not hard to be humble. Literally, so my wife made 300 cupcakes. My wife and my youngest, Bella, spent 12 hours making 300 cupcakes for the memorial yesterday. Or they happened yesterday. So on Friday, I come back from the office, I get home, my wife's like, listen, I gotta go out, I gotta do some errands. I've made 300 cupcakes, they're on the table, but here's the thing. We have a dog, right? We have a boxer. Have you ever met these boxers? She's a moron. I don't know what, she'll eat anything at any time, and she's got all the energy in the world. And my wife gets to the front door, she's like, listen, I cannot have these cupcakes eaten. It's not even an option. So you have one task. Sit at that table, on that chair, and do not move. I'll be back in 2 hours. Listen, I don't care if you're thirsty. I don't care if you got to go to the bathroom. You have one task, my friend. Sit on the chair and do not move. Because if those cupcakes get eaten, it will be unforgivable sin. You will not. And I'm like, okay. And she's giving me all this data. And all of a sudden, Sienna, my oldest, yells from the other room, stop saying all this. You're setting him up for failure. This is gonna be a sermon illustration. That's what she said. I mean, think about how low they must think of me. I can't even do this simple task, like sit on a chair. Anyway, I succeeded. But, yes, thank you. Someone texted me after the last service. They're like, what happened with the cupcakes? So here's the thing, guys. Here's the point. The only way that you're able to get into the kingdom is because he had to die. He had to die because there's no way you could earn it. I went and met this guy on the golf course last week, and we're chatting. I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 7 years old. He said, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a pastor. He goes, oh, not by what you sounded like on the first hole. I'm like, hey, I have Tourette's. Leave me alone. All right. But I looked at him and I said, hey, man, you got your faith journey figured out? He's like, oh, yeah, I got it figured out. I said, okay, well, what is it? He said, I don't need what you talk about. I don't need church. I don't need Jesus. I don't need the Bible. I don't need all this God stuff. Don't worry about me. I got it figured out. Just don't talk to me about this. Let's just get on with the golf. Get on with this thing that's going to be over in 2 hours and not matter for eternity. You see, in his mind, he said, Mark, I'm a good person. Some of you are sitting here right now and you think you're going to go to heaven because you're a good person. If you, being a good person, can get you to heaven, then why must he die? He had to die because you can't get to heaven by being a good person. And some of you were like, yeah, but I got lots of time. So one of the pastors here told me he went to Hawaii last week, just got a break with his family before the chaos of Easter. And he was there with his wife, and they're on the beach, and he went off and hung out with the kids for a bit, and she stayed on the beach, and these 2 guys had been swimming right here, and they came up out of the water with this big fish. And they came up to her and said, you want this fish? We've been fishing in the Pacific here. Here's a fish. She's like, awesome, thank you so much. She chatted with them for like 20 minutes and took a photo and sent it to him. Said, these 2 awesome guys came up. We chatted. They gave me a fish. It was amazing. He's like, cool. An hour later, the pastor and his wife are sitting on the porch of their thing, and they look out and they see these 2 police boats circling, and one of those guys drowned. And she's like, I was just with them an hour ago, and when I was talking to them, I heard God say, tell them about Jesus. and I never did. Your life is so fragile. You don't know whether you're going to exist next week. Easter secures your salvation, that you stop trusting in you and you trust in him and what he has done for you. Father in heaven, we are grateful for your love. We are grateful that you sent Jesus to die in our place, but that he didn't stay dead and he rose from death unto salvation. But there are people in this room that don't trust that yet. They don't treasure it yet. They don't love it yet. They haven't given their lives to you yet. So even in this moment, if that isn't secure for them, that they would know all they need to do is pray a simple prayer. Lord Jesus, you can say this even to yourself, just inside. If you've never come to Jesus, if you've never given your life to him, Lord Jesus, thank you for dying on my behalf for my sin. I receive your salvation. Thank you for rising from death to give me life and to secure heaven. I receive you right now into my heart, into my life. Let me from this moment follow you in the power of the resurrection. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching our Bayside online service. We're so glad that you're actually part of our church, which you are, even though you're watching from all over the world, and we have people literally watching from all over the world. You are part of our family, and we want to get to know you. So please make sure you get in touch with us. Let us know your story. We'd love to hear you and serve you in any way we can. Also, part of what drives the way we connect as a church globally is giving. And so if you're part of our family, we would love you to start giving to our church. Those resources, we steward them to reach people all over the world. And we hear amazing stories about what Jesus is doing with your resources. So if you already give, thank you. If not, you can start giving. We would love that. And then finally, we have all kinds of stuff we do. We have a podcast network. We have like 10 podcasts that address a whole bunch of different things in your life. So if you're a podcaster, join us in the Thrive Podcast Network. We'd love to serve you. We've got a ton of stuff there. We just want to make sure that you feel part of our family. So we love you. Thank you so much for being part of this family, and we will see you next week.